Hello Internet, welcome to the channel. My name's Frankie, and in today's video we are starting a brand new Australian themed mini zoo, and I'm going to show you how I go about building not only the first habitat but kind of designing the initial layout for the zoo and how I come up with a plan for going ahead. So we're going to dive over to Sketchbook Pro on my computer and I'll show you what I mean. Normally I would do this on paper, but just for the sake of the video I thought I would do it on my computer.
Now with this little list that we have here, I'm literally just going to position it off to the side somewhere, just so that I have a bit of a reference point to what animals I want to include in this zoo. Now normally this whole process that I'm doing here, this planning stage, would normally be done on paper, just sat in front of the TV whilst I'm trying to kind of figure out the general plan for my upcoming zoo. Now when it comes to doing a map, I'm not going to do too much detail, but I always kind of sketch out a general shape of what I want the zoo to be like, and in this case we're going to go for a bit of a baked bean shape, I think, because if you just tinkered with this a little bit and added a little bit down here and made it a bit spiky, then it's Australia. Australia is just a spiky baked bean. So I think a baked bean kind of shape will be a good starting position, and it's quite an ergonomic shape. I really like curvy shapes like this. So I think it's just gonna, it has a nice, easy to kind of manipulate shape for when you're building. It's got nice lines to kind of just squeeze things in. Now we're going to have our entrance, I think, in the belly of this curve. I think that'd be a really nice place to have it. So I'm just going to kind of sketch out that the entrance will be here. And I like the idea of it being a bit of a plaza this time. So I'm just going to do a bit of space either side of it. These are going to be some buildings. We're going to have like our kiosk in here, maybe have a gift shop here, and maybe like a toilet block there as well, so that you can walk through and then you start to explore the zoo actually up here. We'll have like some planters and stuff dotted around these plaza areas as well, but we're not going to worry about that for now. Now, things that I do want to pay attention to is in particular, the crocodile, I think, would probably be our biggest ticket animal, because it's the only large carnivore here. We have dingoes and Tasmanian devils, but they're fairly small compared to a crocodile, so I think that's something that we're going to kind of pay a bit of attention to, and I like the idea of them having quite a bit of space. It's either going to go kind of right here or down here, and I'm kind of leaning towards this idea of it being down here, because that will force our guests to explore more of the zoo, if you know what I mean. So I'm going to reserve this edge area for the crocodile, I think. Although, saying that, it might be nice for our guests to be able to walk around the habitat rather than just seeing it from one side, because it's going to be swimming around and stuff. It'd be cool to look down. So maybe we'll do it up here instead, follow the kind of shape of the habitat, of the entire zoo actually. So this could be where our crocodile goes. I'm going to do a little... There we go, crocodile. Scary crocodile. That's crocodile habitat. What should we have near it? Maybe we could keep this kind of water based, so we can have our little penguin habitat up here as well. And what's going to be bordering our zoo? How are we going to round this one out? Generally speaking, I always kind of just have it be that the zoo disappears into forest almost, but I think I kind of want to have some proper walls. So maybe there would be a backstage area up here where our staff have all of their facilities and stuff, and they're able to take care of this part of the zoo, and maybe there could be another one up here as well, so that we have east and west sides of the zoo catered for by different staff areas. It's quite different. I've not really written with my tablet before, so this is a bit strange. we're going to maybe just... Should we keep it nice and small? I think. Actually, yeah, the penguins will make a nice corner habitat, I think, because then you can have a bunch of rocks at the back and have their swimming area kind of take up a bit of the front so that you could have a bit of underwater viewing, and maybe the path could dip down in general here so that you see underwater viewing for the crocodile as well before going around the sides. Yeah, I think that'd be quite nice. So then we've got a bunch of other animals. I think the koalas, generally when they're kept in zoos, because they're such solitary animals, they seem to be kept in a couple groups. So we could have maybe they'll be one of the earliest animals you see. You could come through the entrance here, and then you could have 2 koala habitats with appropriate holding facilities behind them, and obviously you want to go this way, so maybe each koala house could be linked to another habitat house. So here we could have a small animal, we could have 2 small animals either side of it. We could, I've just realised the platypus should be on this list. Wonder why that wasn't on my wiki page. I hope that's spelled correctly. Yeah, we'll have 2 slightly larger outdoor areas here. And this could be, let's make that a bit of a... I'm doing these lines to kind of indicate that that is the roof of something. So here we could keep the quokka. I should have done a little bit of research as to which of these animals can go together. You always see emus and wallabies together, so I think we'll do that. But for now, I'm just going to kind of wing it for the rest of them. So we can do the quokka over there and maybe the wallaby over here. Because wallabies are kind of solitary, right? They don't really like to mess about with other animals. Whoa! I'll just write wall. Okay, and then down here we will do LP for little penguin. Now, should we have something else here? Maybe something really small here would be nice. But then, what do we want to be that small? What if we do another little jelly bean shape, and that could be, thinking probably the kiwi. I'm going to put a line for each of these animals to show that we've popped them on the map, because it's a bit much to keep scanning the whole list each time. K for koala and kangaroo and kiwi. Okay, that doesn't really work, does it? Wombat. Yeah, why did I write wall over here? This was meant to be for the wombat, wasn't it? Warm. Okay. Little kiwis. And they're such small animals, so they can have a really small house there. The habitat house for the penguins could be at the side. And the crocodiles, they're going to need quite a large holding facility, aren't they? We could make this whole area here could be like staff only. So yeah, so their holding area could be like there, I guess. If we make sure to put little barriers in here to stop people going through to the staff area, that could be kind of cool. don't really do much in terms of staff areas normally, so it'd be good to focus on that a bit more. Of course, a little penguin as well. Now we are going to have quite, I think, should we have quite a large area up here for, let's do this. We can halve this large area here using maybe like a bunch of rocks for a miniature mountain or something. I like doing that kind of thing. I did it with the seals and penguins in the Christmas zoo, and then we could have the emus and wallabies. Why have I forgotten to spell wallaby? How to spell wallaby? It's an A, yeah. Wallaby. Sorry for any misspellings here. I'm an idiot. That's basically all I can say about that. Emus and wallabies can be up there. I've already crossed off the wallabies because of the wombat thing earlier. Okay. And then in the habitat next to them, I think maybe the dingoes, give them quite a bit of space. Dingo. Cool. It's starting to look alright. I'm not sold on the designs for these. I might get rid of those central habitats. In fact, I'm going to have another look on the Planet Zoo wiki really quickly. I'm going to look at the wallaby and the quokka, see if they can go with any animals, if they have the enrichment for other animals. You know what? I think I'm going to remove the emu from the wallaby habitat and instead put the kangaroo in here as well, because people that aren't too familiar with kangaroos and wallabies will easily get them confused. So having them in the same habitat where there's such a clear size difference and colour difference may really help with that differentiation. And upon looking at the quokkas page, we can see that they will tolerate being with emus, which I think is really cool, because that size difference might be quite interesting. Emus are obviously these really large birds, and then the quokkas are tiny little mammals. I think it could be quite fun to see the two and how they interact. So I'm going to pop them near the entrance, I think that'll look quite nice. There's a space here that I think should be filled with something. Maybe this could be one of the koala habitats, because I still think it's important to have a couple. And they definitely need some kind of holding facility. So, koala. Holding facility for these guys. What end could it go on? I think maybe just pop it on the corner here. That's good enough, isn't it? Here, there's quite a bit of space here on this. So I'm going to do that little shape. Is going to indicate that there should be a planter of some kind there. There should be a little nature scene right in that spot. Same here, I think. Okay, so that is now the emu, the quokka, the kangaroo, and a wallaby. Kangaroo needs to be ticked off. What was over here? The wombat, wasn't it? So that needs to go back on. Wombat. Just going to quickly make note of what these bits are. Toilets, we'll have, I reckon, a couple shops here, and then a proper gift shop there. Seen something recently that was pretty cool, where it was like a large building that overlooked a habitat. Well, it didn't overlook a habitat. This is just something that I saw on Pinterest. It was just a building that was risen up, and below it was like a plaza area, which I thought looked really nice. And I think it could work really nicely to have that be a habitat down here that you're overlooking. So if I write restaurant here, or I'll just write rest, that's enough. And if this is the gift shop, then we can have a plaza-y kind of seating area out here, which will be kind of cool. Yeah, okay, so we could overlook this area, which I think would be quite nice to have maybe the dingoes in here, or is this too much space? I know, we're giving the dingoes some room up there, haven't we? So maybe we could make that the Tasmanian Devil instead, because off the top of my head, I don't know too much about the Tasmanian Devil, but they seem like more of a solitary animal, whereas the dingoes definitely travel in groups, don't they? So they're going to need less space, the Tasmanian Devil, so we'll put those up there. Tas Devil. And then we can pop the dingo in here. And there could be like a bunch of rock work that goes around the back, a nice water area right there. And maybe inside the rock work is where their holding facility is, so that you can't see it as a guest. I think that'd be quite nice. Now, the platypus and the wombat, they are both, if I'm not mistaken, I know the wombat is primarily nocturnal, but I'm fairly sure the platypus is quite active at night as well. So maybe, even though it might not look the nicest to have a big building right in the middle when you come out from the entrance. No, it'd be really nice to be able to see this mountain area from the entrance, wouldn't it? Okay, so we'll get rid of that. Instead, we will create a... Ooh, we're running out of space, but that's okay. I think I'm going to get rid of this staff area here. Get rid of that. We could probably have staff facilities like round the back here, couldn't we, to be fair? Yeah, okay. So what we could do is we could have it be that you can only actually see the dingoes if you come up through the restaurant or through a path that goes up that side, and then you can look down in like that. But I think it's going to be important to keep the dingo habitat sunk a bit lower levels so you can see down into it instead. I think that'll look quite nice. Oh, I accidentally got rid of the path. I was just meant to get rid of the arrow. Okay, there we go. And then in this little area here, maybe. Yeah, because then we could have a holding facility for the Tasmanian Devil as well. Okay, here we are going to have a kind of a night house, I think. So this is somewhere that you can walk inside, and we're gonna have... This might extend out around the back, I think. Yeah, I think that'll work. So we'll have an interior look at the Tasmanian Devil right there, and then maybe up this end we could have what we got, the wombat, or I want a better shape than that. What if we did it like that? That could be the wombat habitat. Wombat. And if we continue that curve, this half could be for the platypus. Perry. Okay, so where did that line go? It's just in the middle of the map. Oops. We could, yeah. And wombat. Cool. Cassowary right in the middle, maybe? I don't know. This middle area, I'm not entirely sure what to do with it, because I don't want it to be anything that is too tall and then blocks this view, which it would be kind of cool to have even the habitat slightly rising up towards this mountain. So we're going to put the cassowary here preliminarily. Maybe what we could do, even though they're flightless birds, we could make maybe like a roofless aviary. We could do like a aviary sort of thing here. Oh, maybe the cassowary could go in there, and if we keep it low enough, we'll be able to see this mountain. Actually, you know what? No. We're going to move the emus and quokkas because that would go so much nicer there. So I'm going to quickly move those. And I think the emu is quite a funny entrance animal. I think people are going to be quite entertained by that. So that's pretty cool. And then we can have our cassowary down here instead, which will work a bit nicer, I think. Cassow. Yeah, cassow. Now, we have only got one koala habitat when I said that we'd have a couple. So I'm not sure. And then this night house over here, that can include the bats as well and some of the other exhibit animals that we want to have in this zoo. And the butterflies, though, I'm not entirely sure where we could have the butterflies. Maybe this could extend up and round. And this mountain is just going to be kind of like a facade made out of faux rocks. So we don't have to worry too much about that. But if we allow it to go up and round a little bit, then we could potentially have maybe a little greenhouse right at the edge that has all the butterflies in it. Now I'm going to see what I can do to make this work, but I've just realised that the kiwi is actually mainly nocturnal. They are most active at night. So what if we repurpose this area to be another koala habitat? So let's just draw in the shape. And the habitat house could be over here, so this whole area is kind of blocked off. It's staff and habitat houses. Yeah, okay. So this could be for koalas again. But I want to see if I can make it a walk-through place for butterflies as well. I'm not sure about mixing habitat animals and exhibit animals, but we can give it a go, can't we? So, this is my general plan for the Australia mini zoo. Or not mini zoo, I'm not entirely sure if it counts as mini. There's quite a lot going on here. But the basic idea is here. This is my first kind of idea for how it's going to look. And I will tell you right now, it will change. When planning zoos like this is how I do it. And it is a really useful tool to have this up front and being able to reference it, but it will change. I'm going to print this off and I'll have it on hand for when I'm doing the actual building of the zoo, because normally I would draw this on paper and I wouldn't need to print it off, it'd be fine. But we're going to print it off so that I have it on hand for the designing elements of these zoos. Now, we have had a brief look at this, so I think it's about time that we dive in and actually start building. And that is probably going to begin with putting in these buildings here for the entrance. We're not going to go full detail, we're just going to put the shells in so that we can have them functioning, but they're not going to look pretty because I like to build in franchise mode. And then we're probably going to build the emu and quokka habitat up here, and we don't have the quokkas yet, so we'll be able to add those later, which will be really cool. At the end of the month we'll be able to just pop them in, I think. At least, I think they're in the Oceania pack, aren't they? I can't think off the top of my head. It's either the Oceania or Australia pack, but if we don't have them already, they will be added at the end of the month. So that is what we're going to build in this episode, I think. So let's get into it. So first things first is to start building the entrance, and I'm going to be really loose with this. It's going to be done on the grid so that we get some nice plaza-y areas, and we're going to pop all our buildings down, but this is by no means the final position for anything. This is literally just so that we have these buildings in and then we can start earning money and our staff can actually do their job and whatnot. But
I do plan on renovating this whole area, and the position of things are probably going to move. So we are literally just popping them down where they need to be for now in order to get this zoo up and running straight away. The general design premise for our habitat is going to be that we're going to have the front of it be quite sunken down below the ground so that our emus and wallabies can't jump out. And yes, I am adding wallabies to this habitat. Although I was just talking about having the emu and quokka, I do want to be able to earn as much money as quickly as possible when first opening this zoo. So we're going to kind of maximize what we can do with this space by ensuring that we have multiple species rather than just having the emu and waiting for the quokka to come to console. So we're going to put wallabies in here as well for the time being at least. Although by the end of this habitat build, I'm kind of in love with these wallabies and think they're probably going to stay, and we'll do something else for the quokka. So already you can see how that initial plan that I drew out is changing, like from the very beginning. So yeah, the plans for this habitat have changed already a little bit, but the idea is to have this front portion be sunken down a smidge, and that will allow us to have a shorter fence at the front, which means that our guests will be able to see in a lot nicer, whilst we create a custom barrier, which is just going to be a really simple fence using a couple beams from the Australia pack and a bunch of mesh, just to create a really standardized fence that we can copy and paste around the perimeter of this habitat and kind of adjust its height and stuff, and it will all blend together rather seamlessly. I'm going to pop this, when I'm done, I'm going to pop this over by my staff area so that if I want to use this fence again in later portions of the zoo, I definitely can, because that's something I don't do enough. I will often create custom barriers and whatnot and then just completely forget about them and have to create an entirely new custom barrier for each habitat. But by having this kind of blueprint, I guess, off to the side, it'll ensure that across the zoo we have a bit of synergy and that some of the barriers are looking the same. It's just going to create kind of a consistent look throughout the zoo, which is really going to help for theming. Even though this is a really bland and pretty standardized fence, it does kind of create a bit of a theme. So this is going to cover the vast majority of the perimeter of this habitat, whilst at the front we're going to have that little sunken area so that our guests can have a shorter fence to be able to have a nicer view of our animals. This is going to kind of push our guests towards a dedicated viewing area, which is what I want to do. And then by having these meshy fence around the sides, we're going to have plants and stuff and other decorations kind of surrounding the edges so that as a guest you are forced to look through this designated viewing area rather than peeking through the fences. By all means you can, you just won't get as good a view. For the habitat house, I'm going to use some standard concrete floor pieces to create kind of a footprint for the building so I know where it is, how big it's going to be and stuff. And then I'm going to start building up the walls using the Australian wood panels because I think these look really nice. And for the zoo I want to go for a largely recycled kind of feeling. We're going to be using a lot of woods and metals. Metals, despite people not thinking that they are, I guess, synonymous with recycling, you often think of plastics and woods. Metals, particularly steel, can kind of be infinitely recycled, so you can always melt it down and recast it as something, which is the idea by having like metal fences and stuff. We are going to go for a strangely tiered roof here. You can see they overlap and overhang, leaving gaps. The idea for that was to allow a bit of air circulation. It's very hot here, so we want there to be a bit of free-flowing air. It's also going to stop the habitat houses smelling quite as much because the smells can get out, and it's just a bit unique, isn't it? It's something that I haven't really done before, so it's just another thing to make this building look a little bit more interesting. We're also using the Australian metal roof pieces as well. I really like how they look. That corrugated iron kind of look is pretty cool. Now, filling in all of this space at the edge of the buildings, creating the gables, kind of difficult because of the weird shape I've created, but with a bit of perseverance, it does get done. Nothing too bad. And whilst filling in these gables, a little square appeared, which just didn't fill in. I could have filled it in, but there was just a natural square that was left, and I really quite liked it. It reminded me of a barn and the entryway for like an owl or something, so I decided to keep it for that very purpose. We're going to have little square windows at the top of each gable to allow any wild birds that are native to the area to fly in and make a nest in the roof of this building. I think that'd be really nice. And to create a little window frame, I'm going to use some of my favourite wood pieces, which are of course the Twilight door panels. The wood pieces from the Twilight pack, they're wonderful. And I think the contrast between such a dark window frame and a really light wall is quite nice. It's really simple to do, just lining the outside of that square, and then it really does look like a completed window. And we're not going to add glass or anything. The idea is to allow birds in and stuff, so that's why we're keeping it open. Now outside, near the entrance that the animals would enter the building, we're going to use some fairly simple metal beams to create kind of a support system for the entryway, because at the moment we have a roof piece that's dangling in midair. We're also going to use a couple temple pieces, the nice square block. I love this piece, it's so nice. I'm going to sink that into the bottom to make sure that there is an anchoring point for these metal poles, something that would secure them in the ground. And at the very top of this gable area, it looks a bit empty, so I'm just going to use a couple supporting wooden structures just to make it look as if though it's got a bit more support up there, because it still does look a bit too open and empty, as if though it could fall down at any time, and that's not great. So we're going to just pop a couple planks up there to help with supporting it. And of course, in terms of structural support, at the moment the roof is kind of levitating as well due to this tiered kind of structure that I've built. So I'm going to use a couple rusted metal rods. I believe this is from the Australian pack as well. I'm going to use the shortest one available and just sink them into the roof and fill that gap, just to make it look as if though there is something supporting the roof. And I'm going to use the rusted rod for the reason that the roof is already looking a bit battered. It looks as if it's been there for a long time, it's starting to rust, it's had a lot of rain and dirt and stuff on it. It just really lends itself to this kind of grungy looking area, which I'm liking the idea of for this zoo, having it look a little bit windswept, as if it's been battered by sand over the years and stuff. So we're going to try and lean into that as we build the zoo. Right here you can see me building a little off-show area for our emus and wallabies. It's important to make sure that aside from the indoor area, our animals do have somewhere to go if they want a little bit of privacy. So this part here won't be visible to the public from the other side of the habitat. And if they want to go outside but don't want to be seen by the public, they can go there. And it's also a good way for, in the real world, if our keepers wanted to clean out the entire habitat, they could put them in there and not be interrupted by the animals, because they would just be secured in that lovely little area instead. Back at the front of the habitat, we're going to create the short barrier that our guests will be able to see over the top of, and to do that we're going to use some of the painted Australian poles, because I think they look really nice and it's going to start to introduce that proper Australian theming. We're then going to use some fairly plain poles as joining pieces between the two fence posts, and with that we will have a fence piece that we can copy and paste around the edge of this habitat. Now it does look a little bit samey because these poles have been painted a certain way and for some reason they all look identical. So once we have got these fence panels in place, I'm going to come back and select every other or a few more of these fence posts and rotate them in random ways to make sure there's a bit of variation and make it look like these things have actually been hand painted rather than just, I don't know, bought in, I guess. And I'm not only going to rotate them round, but I'm also going to flip them upside down as well for a bit of further variation to make sure the lines are going in different directions, not just being seen from different angles. As the ground is sunken around this fence, there is a little bit of a slope leading up to it, which isn't ideal for our guests. So what I'm going to do is add some mulch here so that we've got a nice earthy looking area, and this will allow me to create a lovely little flower bed that separates our guests from the path and the fence, so they're not going to go up and lean over and try and stroke the emu or drop any food into the habitat. They are still going to be kept a safe distance from this fence, but they will have a much better view than if they were to go around the other side of the habitat. Back over at the habitat house, I want to start partitioning it a little bit so that there's an area for our zookeepers to go in and do what work they need to do, and space for our animals to sleep. So to do this, I'm going to create a little fence, and it is going to be using the same pieces that I've built the fence for this perimeter with. So that's the metal beam and some mesh along with some metal rods as well, and they're all going to be the same colour. This is going to tie it into the rest of the habitat, but building it from scratch means that it's going to look ever so slightly different as it is the interior. It basically is the same, it's just certain rods are closer together and stuff. And we're just going to use this to separate off where the humans will go and where the animals will go. I also need to ensure that our zookeepers can get into this building, and whilst they can walk through walls, it does look a bit weird if they do so. So we're going to use a door, and we're going to use one from the North African pack because I really like the rustic look of it. It's basically just planks of wood strung together with some metal support systems. We're also going to use an Indonesian door handle on it because I really like the wooden handle that you get from that pack. It's really nice. And then to create a door frame, we're just going to use the trusty Twilight door frame pieces, just to make sure this door doesn't look so out of place. And when you've got a door design that you're fond of, all you need to do is select all of it, copy and paste, and then rotate it 180 degrees, and you can sink it through the wall to the other side so that it's mirrored on that side. One thing to keep in mind though is that you're going to have to change what side of the door the handle is on, because it needs to be on the same side as on the other side of the wall. Now I'm going to go ahead and place down the enrichment items for our animals so that we can place the things inside that we want to be inside, such as the water pipe, a bunch of bedding and a few of the toys, just to ensure that our animals have something to do whilst inside and it's not all focused outside. And if you've watched this channel for a while now, you will know that I'm not overly fond of the wooden frame at the edge of the foraging and mud pits. I think they're quite ugly and look a bit too man-made. So I'm going to use a fairly recurring technique that I use for those types of things. On the foraging box, we're going to use some long stones and stuff to create a frame for it, and then we're going to use some flat stones to sink into the ground to kind of blend the two different types of stones together. It's just a really nice way of making this look a little bit more natural. It's not going to look completely natural because of how bright the ground is. Being such a dry and arid area, you're not going to get any natural earth texture that looks quite as dark as the foraging box, which is why I'm not trying to raise the ground up over the edge of the frame, but instead using rocks, because then it does just look as if though the keepers have created a rocky area that they filled with this foraging stuff, which is completely fine. Inside the habitat house, I have quite a bit of fun making a backstage area. The first thing you've seen me do here is use some hay roof pieces from the Africa theme, I believe, and sink them into the ground to create a few piles of hay, as if though that's where our keepers are getting hay from to create the bedding for our animals. Now, for the decoration of this area, I had created a couple fences some shelves in primate aisles that I'm going to use here, and then we're just going to cover them in various containers full of fruit and other things that you're generally going to have in a backstage area. We want to make this feel like a living space. I am super duper happy to have all of these pieces from the conservation pack. It makes building these backstage areas so much more fun because you can have more of a varied selection of items. And a little fun thing that I've decided to do is take the pitchfork off the hook on the wall and instead have it sticking out of this pile of hay. I just think it adds a little bit of life to this area, makes it seem as if though it is a general working space and people are coming in and doing things. Really focusing on these backstage areas is something I don't do often enough because it really does create quite an immersive feeling to the whole zoo. It makes it seem a lot more realistic and it just makes it look prettier as well. And to be honest, using loads of different building pieces to completely litter an area like this is quite fun. It can be enjoyable to just mess up an area, but in a controlled way, if you know what I mean. Something else that I'm going to do is once we've kind of put all of our props in, we've made it look all pretty and packed full of life, we're going to use a few decals on the floor to make it look as if though this area is quite frequently used. We're going to use a couple cracks and whatnot. We could have used some grunge, but I decided against it because I want this area to be generally clean. It's just quite old, which is why there are a few cracks in the ground. Yeah, just use some of those decals on areas that see the most wear and tear to get the most foot traffic. So that's going to be by the door and the gate to the habitat. Now it's time for the most enjoyable part of any habitat build, and that is to start adding all of the foliage and rocks. So we're going to create a few little rocky outcrops, as we want that to kind of be consistent throughout the zoo, that this is a dry area and we're going to have a bunch of rocks. And then we're going to focus some trees near the back edge of the habitat and closer to the habitat house, leaving the area that our guests can see quite clearly to be fairly open so that our guests get a decent view at our animals. We're also going to create a couple groups for this habitat build. We're going to create a group of rocks. Using the faux rocks, we're going to absolutely litter this habitat, and then we're going to make sure they're all in the same group so that we can select them and, using the advanced move tools, sink them below the surface so they look a little less fake and instead look like smaller rocks littered across the whole habitat. It's just going to create a lovely texture across the whole space. We're also going to do the same thing using some grass. I can't remember exactly what the plant was for this habitat, but it wasn't buffalo grass for a change. We're going to really be quite choosy where we're placing this. This is going to be around the bases of all of the trees and stuff and away from the sandy areas that we put in this habitat. You can notice on the ground that I created some paths where the ground has been worn down the most, where our animals have been travelling the most. That is where it's going to be quite sandy and earthy because they've kind of worn down all the grass. So the plant life is going to be the densest away from those paths. It's kind of like a game trail that you see in nature where deers and stuff will use the exact same path each time they are out in the wild, and therefore just slowly kind of grind down the earth to make a natural path. So yeah, that is the main idea behind all of the plant placement here. I really hope you enjoy the rest of this video and found the planning stage of this video to be informative. If you did, let me know in the comments and make sure to give this video a thumbs up. It really helps quite a lot, ensuring that other people see this video. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, I'll see you later.
nas achas,